Welcome back, friends, to the Call to Love podcast. I am so grateful that you have joined me. And today is a treat for you moms and our listening audience. Each week we dive into really hard topics and conversations that revolve around saying yes to God and a very hard calling. We're pouring out our lives for our kids daily, learning how to love well and serve well those who've experienced loss and trauma. And this can really weigh on the heart and soul. So today, I want to provide you with just a little bit of a respite and talk about a life well lived. And joining me for this conversation today is one of my favorites, and I know she will be yours as well, Sally Clarkson. Sally is a best-selling author, renowned speaker, and beloved mentor who has dedicated her life to inspiring countless women to live for Christ. And today she's here to share with us a little bit more about her newest book release, Well Lived: Shaping a Legacy of Gratitude and Grace. Sally, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. Yes. We'll just go on the road together. How's that? I love it. So, Sally, we are speaking to the hearts of moms today and thinking about, your message of well lived and sharing a legacy of gratitude and grace. You talk about in the book that a lot of times we find ourselves in the midst of tough seasons. And that is every mom represented in this listening audience because it is tough work to be a foster or adoptive mom. And so you talk about taking the time to ask yourself the question, am I thriving? Am I truly living well? And what does living well really mean? So, who better to speak to this audience of moms than you, who can speak into every aspect of motherhood? And, Sally, the struggle is really real. So, if you don't mind to kick off this conversation, I want to begin with something that you share in your newest book, because right off the bat, I feel like it just gives us a great place to launch from and gives us some perspective. So, you say in the book, women, I believe, are amazing creatures and have the ability to civilize the world, to influence generations by generously pouring out love, training the very character and souls of the next generation, and persevering through great trials and challenges while coming out resiliently. I love that. That is so profound. And just the thought that women have the ability to influence generations. So let's begin by talking about that influence and how invaluable it is, whether we're able to see it or not in the midst of the hard, Sally. Yeah. Yeah. Mm, yeah. Sure. I've heard of it, but I've never watched it. Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love that, Sally. What a great reminder because we do take on so much as the queen of our homes and we are that barometer that kind of determines the temperature and the culture of our homes. And that is no small thing. It is everything for the family unit. We talk about this in trauma education a lot of what are those anchors in your household, those predictable things. And for mom to be there, to be present, to give out the love, the kindness, the patience, the structure, all of the different things that you're talking about. I mean, it is just a game changer when it comes to how a family unit functions. And this world, as you well know, Sally, has a lot to say about how women are supposed to do that. And social media can be the worst. And you're talking about that perfection component of this is the way to do it. And this is the standard to measure yourself against. And even when we get into, just life as Christian women, this is what this is supposed to look like. And when we're not meeting those standards for whatever reason, you graciously shared with us a lot of experiences that you had. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to the hard in different ways that you had shared in your own life experience. We don't feel like we're doing it well. And so the enemy cannot stand for us to be that strong anchor and the queen of our homes and our stories, like you're talking about. And so he's hard at work trying to convince us that what we're doing isn't working, that it doesn't matter, that we've missed the mark on perfection that is being presented to us. And so I would love to ask you, in your experience, what wisdom you would offer. What encouragement do you have for us when those lies just feel really easy to believe and we feel like we're struggling and we're failing in these areas? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. Right. Right. Yes. Mm, mm, yeah, right. I love it. Mm. I love that. That's absolutely beautiful and so encouraging. You were talking about the chaos, and I think that is so representative of, some form of how we're living our lives, because when you step into brokenness and you're talking about those who would otherwise be overlooked, there is a lot of chaos that comes with that choice and that calling. And so it can be anything but peaceful. And I think, you talking about this idea of a life well lived, maybe there's been this, subconscious expectation that well lived means a resolve and a peace. But we want to live life well in the day in and day out, even when the chaos is happening. And, you even speaking to that with your own children who've struggled with, different issues. And that is definitely representative. A lot of our kids that have different diagnoses that they struggle with on a daily basis. And that in itself can be chaotic because it's not quote unquote normal as you're talking about. And so we're fighting the societal pressure. Right. Please, yeah, say that again. Agreed. Absolutely. And why would we want there to be? So it's frustrating, and I think that's probably another tool of the enemy, of these expectations of what this box, like you're saying, that we should fit our kids into. And our kids coming from hard places and trauma, they don't fit into those boxes, but they shouldn't be expected to. And so, along those lines, just thinking about well lived and in the midst of chaos, what does it look like to live a life well when you're in a season of chaos that you really, I mean, you're kind of, that's where the Lord has you. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Do you need to pause? That's so good. Well, we were talking around this idea of what it looks like to live a life well lived, even in the midst of chaotic seasons. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm, yeah, yeah. I love that. Yes. Yeah. Such a good word. I absolutely agree with that. And you're right, talking about just this idea of love. And, in thinking about that, Sally, in all honesty, parenting kids with big behaviors and habits of rejection for the purpose of self preservation and protection, they can sabotage relationships and not be willing to enter into that very easily. It takes a long time to build that trust. And so there is that ongoing, right? The pouring out of love. But you're talking about being human, and I appreciate you bringing that up because it's very pretty to say, just living that life of love and Christ-like, but the reality is it is a choice every day as you're talking about, and it's a challenge, especially because in our flesh, we just want to shrink back from the constant rejection and the unlovable behaviors that our kids can display sometimes and guard ourselves. And so you talk about this a little bit in the book and just talking about what it means to live with your whole heart. So how can that apply to us as we're loving our kids and maybe not experiencing trust and connection with them on the day-to-day basis? We're in the process of building that, but we're wanting to live and love with our whole hearts. Yeah. Right. Mm, yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Wow. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes, we talk about the absolute importance of community on this podcast all the time, and it is. And I believe if you ask the Lord for that, He will provide that because it was His idea. Community and fellowship and doing life together as believers was absolutely His idea, and so I believe He will provide that. And I think that's a really great reminder, Sally. As we're closing out our conversation, there was something about just in studying and learning a little bit more about your book, Well Lived. You talked about this idea of preparing for celebration ahead of time. And that can be really difficult sometimes because you're kind of almost in this mindset without realizing it of anticipating the next hard thing rather than the next celebration, right? And whether that's just true in life or true in parenting, but definitely when we're parenting kiddos from hard places, we're always anticipating the negative and we're trying to brace ourselves for that instead of preparing for the things that we want to celebrate. And so whatever season is coming, you talk about being able to face it well and to celebrate. So I'd love for you to encourage our listeners with that idea of preparing for celebration ahead of time. Wow. Yeah. I love that. Yes. It's beautiful and just fascinating that that's what the Lord taught you through such a dark situation. And wow, I am looking forward to taking that one with me and not even filing it away, but implementing that. Listeners, I hope you're excited by that because that is such a great reminder. We walk through the day in and the day out, and I jokingly use the phrase "keep the tiny humans alive" kind of a thing. We can get into that mindset, right? And it's survival mode. It's check all the boxes. It's do all the things, but are we really doing it well? And are we living life in a way that the Lord has ordained for us all along, and recognizing those little things. And it's just such a beautiful reminder, everything that you've shared with us today, Sally. And I'm so grateful for your wisdom and to be able to glean from what the Lord has taught you and for this beautiful resource. I want to make sure that our listeners can get a copy of it, that they can connect with you further. The book, friends, is Well Lived, Shaping a Legacy of Gratitude and Grace. Sally, how can they get a copy and connect with you further? Absolutely. This conversation has been greatly encouraging to me. And friends, I'm going to make sure we have all things Sally in the link in today's show notes so that you can access that easily. I have been so blessed by your resources for years now, and I believe many in our listening audience have as well. And so thank you so much for the work that you do, for your willingness to share with our listeners today. You are such a blessing, and we are just grateful for the work that the Lord is going to continue to do in and through you. So, Sally, thank you so much for being my guest. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you.